Good evening, and welcome back to the Masonic Roundtable, a weekly hangout where Masons from around the world get together to talk about Masonic news and opinions in a friendly and social manner. The standard disclaimer applies. The thoughts and opinions expressed here are solely those of the participants and do not represent any Grand Lodge statements or positions. Make sure to keep your conversations open to the public and on the level. Tonight, as we've done in all of our previous broadcasts, we are soliciting questions and comments from you via social media. You can tweet us at Mason Roundtable with the hashtag TMR Episode 29, TMR Episode 29, or you can leave us a comment or comments on our Facebook page under the event invite, and we'll make sure to get to you and bring you into the discussion later on. Start off with a quick round of introductions. My name is Jason Richards, and I'm a Senior Deacon of Acacia Lodge number 16 in Clifton, Virginia. Let's move on to Nick Johnson.
Hi, I'm Nick Johnson. I'm a past master of Corinthian Lodge number 67 in Big Time Farmington.
John Ruark.
Great. I'm John Ruark, past master of the Patriot Lodge number 1957 in Fairfax, Virginia.
And last but certainly not least, our special guest for this evening, Eric Jameson. Please introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Eric Jameson. I'm Senior Steward for Acacia number 42 out of Arizona, Avondale, Arizona, Grand Lodge, Arizona.
Great. Before we get into tonight's topic of military lodges, let's go through a little bit of Masonic news. First and foremost, we pitched it last night, but there's a new Masonic radio series coming out, starting off with Robert Johnson's podcast, Whence Came You? And it's really exciting. It's just an attempt to reproduce the old-time 20s and 30s radio dramas with more of a Masonic spin, and they're really great. I've seen the first one, what it's going to be, and it's awesome. So check it out. It's going to be coming out hopefully in the next 4 to 8 weeks. So go ahead and like the Facebook page and check it out because it's going to be absolutely fantastic. So moving on, John, you wanted to talk about something coming to a theater near you.
Oh, absolutely. Thanks for saying. Let's see. There was a new commercial for a new horror movie coming out. I think it's going to come out the 29th of this month of August. And it's called As Above, So Below. And just the title itself kind of got my interest for those who may be inclined to think about some of the esoteric things. As Above, So Below is a term that's kind of used in Scottish Rite Masonry, as well as some of the esoteric hermetic things like the Emerald Tablet and that kind of thing. What I found interesting is I started to check out the trailers and kind of read up on what the movie's about. It's a typical kind of horror movie that's in the first-person perspective, or the found footage perspective, and it's about these group of archaeologists that go to the catacombs underneath of Paris. They're trying to find some artifact, and the participants in the excavation are getting caught up in some ghosts or whatever down there that are really punishing them for the things that they did above. So it's kind of as above, the sins they did above ground are catching up to them below down in the catacombs. It's really spooky, creepy, and all that fun stuff. Okay, I get it. I see where they're going with it. It's really not used in the same vein as the way it's used in some of the Scottish Rite things or some of the esoteric readings. However, I did want to add that just this morning I was watching a new TV advertisement for it and came across this section, and I'll put the link on the show notes. At the tail end of the video, they show a little symbol behind the title, the As Above, So Below. And it's very subtle and it's very hard to see, but this is the best screenshot I could put up of this. It purely is the symbol for the Philosopher's Stone, for those who have read into those kind of things. Take a look at it, make your own calls on what that is. It certainly piqued my interest to go watch the movie, because although it may be a horror movie, at the on the surface, somebody knew what they were doing when they put this symbol in. So somebody's got to be a Mason that works on that that production there. But I'm very curious to see if they actually do any sort of esoteric things in there as well. So stay tuned for that. It comes out on the 29th.
Very cool. One thing I wanted to talk about in Masonic news is we've kind of had a resurgence of exciting Masonic scapegoating over the past couple weeks. First, with the leader of the Russian rebels in Ukraine denouncing the Masons for single-handedly creating the crisis in Ukraine. And then just last week, ISIS, the insurgent group currently in Iraq, denounced the president as for aiding the Western Freemasons who are attempting to subvert their takeover of the country. And I don't put this on par with the typical Masons are planning to take over the world, because unlike a lot of the other conspiracies, I am perfectly happy with with taking like full blame for trying to subvert both of those groups. So it's interesting that even in today's society, Masons are still kind of a convenient scapegoat for things going on in the world over which we have purportedly little or no control.
But it brings up a good point that it really is ignorance that really causes that. So to me, it actually shows a level of the ignorance of those people trying to put a blame on a title or on a group of people. You know what I mean? That yes, it's 2014. You think with all the information that's out there, people would know that we're definitely not trying to take over the world or subvert anything. But yet, you get these groups that are trying to blame us for things, even in 2014, and it just blows my mind. It really is telling that they don't know what they're even talking about.
We really ought to wake up sheeple about that,
Yes. What were you saying, Eric?
Oh, I was just saying it's fear-based. If you're different, then they can use that as a mechanism to create fear. So.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. The way I see it, we just need to bring back the lizard men. That was just a cool conspiracy.
Did they ever leave?
No.
They are in a giant fight with the Greys, so the Grey aliens. I know. There you go. That's your information for today. Bring that home, guys.
Thanks, Nick.
Our own personal encyclopedia, Nick Johnson. So speaking of our own personal encyclopedia, Nick, why don't you talk a little bit about some of the recent developments in European Masonry?
Well, I was whenever you say something like French and then Freemasonry together, it's very complicated. It's not an easy thing to understand, even for them, I think. So, but anyway, I don't know if any of you know about the Grand Lodge Nationale Française was imploding about, 2009, 2010. It was under receivership or something like that, so a judge was monitoring it. I mean, literally the Grand Lodge was imploding in on itself. Lodges were leaving. Lodges are forming Grand Lodges, because obviously, when you don't really know what your current holder of anything is doing, you might as well get out now, right? You don't want to be the last rat on the ship, And so, I guess, at least what I was understanding is there was this thing called the Berlin Declaration, which was a 5 Grand Lodges. I think it was Switzerland, Belgium, German Grand Lodges, then a couple other ones from the continental European theater. Said, well, you know what? We really should just allow these Grand Lodges that formed from the after they dispersed. We should allow them to just form their own confederation, and then we'll just recognize the confederation, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, the actions came quickly and swiftly with the home Grand Lodges, at least what I noticed, and they just sent out a statement saying, we don't accept this kind of idea that we're recognizing the Grand Lodge Nationale Française, and that was kind of their this is the last of it. I mean, they recognized GLNF, at their June quarterly meeting. They meet quarterly, and so they recognized them at that time, and the other two joined them, Ireland and Scotland. And so, it's one of those that, there were two different theories of how to deal with the French issue, which is, we'll just recognize what, because the Grand Lodge has come back at least a little bit, has a new Grand Master and things like that. So the home lodges, it makes sense that they would go back and recognize it, but it also made sense that you'd have the, confederation, because there already exists one in Europe of the German Grand Lodges, After World War II, there were like 8 or 10 Grand Lodges. Or before World War II, Hitler came in, made it illegal, came back out. They resurrected 2, and then another one came up, and another one came up, and then they got up to 5, and they made a confederation. So it makes sense. I mean, there was already a precedent for both. And it was just kind of an interesting thing to see. It was almost a competition between the continent and the home lodges to duke out how recognition should happen within the French jurisdiction. So
what's going on today that's making this topic relevant?
At least from what I was understanding is that with the statement by the home Grand Lodges, again that would be the United Grand Lodge of England, the Grand Lodge of Ireland, and the Grand Lodge of Scotland, of saying we will not accept any kind of confederation. It seems that pretty much puts the kibosh on any kind of confederation coming in the future.
Gotcha. Interesting.
Well, it brings to light the fact that recognition is still something struggled. That the very basis of Grand Lodges still struggle with today, and it's a complicated issue. Not just in the United States between Prince Hall and the Grand Lodge system, or any number of the spurious Grand Lodges that have popped up. It's kind of recognition is kind of a worldwide issue that we're going to have to keep dealing with as Masons.
Yeah. I mean, when we were at the this Castle Island Virtual Lodge, we could have run into a problem as well. I mean, my Grand Lodge has, they went in Rome, but other Grand Lodges don't, and it could have been possible that somebody from the, a Grand Lodge that they recognize in Manitoba that we don't would have been present, and in some Grand Lodges you're expected to find out what everybody is and then get the heck out of there if they're somebody that you can't sit in lodge with, and so that's just, it can get very complicated. We've got most North American Grand Lodges recognize the Grand Orient of Italy, but the home Grand Lodges recognize the regular Grand Lodge of Italy, and so you can run into all kinds of problems right away. Well, who's right? And anybody's right. Nobody's right.
Yeah.
Left is right.
All a matter of perspective and who wields the biggest stick at that point.
Right.
So let's, without further ado, let's get into our topic tonight, which is military lodges. And this idea is centered on lodges that are given dispensation to meet out, near the battlefield and forward operating bases around the world. And I'd like to start by opening up the floor to our guest tonight, Eric Jameson, just to talk a little bit about his experience with military lodges and what the concept means to him.
Sure, thanks a lot. So I had the distinct honor and privilege to deploy over to Afghanistan as a newly raised Master Mason. Thanks in part to a huge shout out to Herndon 264 in Herndon, Virginia there to make that happen for me, and I really, those guys are dear in my heart. So, but that being said, I deployed into Afghanistan, into Kandahar, and was unaware exactly, could not find out any information prior to getting there that there was a specific lodge in existence. Had been told that I needed to deploy as a Master Mason if at all possible so that I could participate. So I got over there, I was walking on the boardwalk, and I happened to come across a square and compass. And sign with a email and a phone number. So I called the guy, and that was all it was. It just said it was just a square and compass and a name and phone number. And so I called and we just talked and we agreed to meet. So I went to the meeting place, the local one of the restaurants there, and I was looking for somebody with a Masonic hat, something that was standing out, and nothing. Finally, ended up overhearing a group of guys sitting there, and went, okay, that's you guys, and went up and introduced myself. And so we got kicked off. We started working. They exchanged cards and everything, and what I found was that this was a Canadian lodge under the Grand Lodge of Ontario, and worshipful brother, the very worshipful brother Rick Fulford is a worshipful master, and he's been there for about 4 or 5 years now as a contractor, rotating in and out every couple months, but he'd be there for 3 months and out. So he provided a stability for the lodge to be able to be in existence. And over the course of time, just a brief history, they've been in existence since 2010. They'd originally started off as a lodge of a lodge of discussion, and they'd gotten special dispensation. Over about 6 months, they were able to move up to being a lodge of work, and they started conducting degree work over the time. And it was really a process of growing. As whenever people would leave, you would end up growing. So there would be a period of downtime, and then he would leave for a month and come back and then restart the lodge, in essence. So the lodge started anew every 3 months, really. But and I experienced that while I was there. So anyways, he invited me to go meet, and come to the meeting. So that was great. It was an amazing experience from that point on. For the rest of my 6 months there, we just had a fantastic time, and we were the only AF and AM lodge in Afghanistan that was a working lodge. I understand there were some lodges up in Kabul or in other places that were lodges of discussion, and of course there were Prince Hall lodges in existence on all bases, and there was actually, I think, 1 or 2 Prince Hall lodges at Kandahar with an Order of Eastern Star and an Orient, and very social, very active. But we had some of the Prince Hall guys come over to us because they enjoyed the ritual. They said so the Canadian ritual is quite different from the American ritual. It's more of the Scottish style, and that was very fascinating for me to learn. But the basic structure was the worshipful master sat, and he appointed all other officers as needed. So I sat as the Tyler, the inner guard, the junior deacon, senior deacon, and about the last 3 months I sat as the senior warden. And so we just served wherever we needed to and whoever showed up. We all worked 12, 14-hour days, and we still found time to meet together in the lodge. So originally, and I'll share this, when we first started meeting, we were meeting in a darkened room, and that was our altar.
Oh, nice.
And there was one light. The building power had been turned off, so we were having to meet with candles and a generator. So that was always a challenge. But we went through. We started once we had enough people. It was about, I think, 1 meeting, and then we had enough people because our group had just left. So we started initiations. He had petitions waiting, so we started initiations. We were initiating 2 guys every week for the first month that I was there, and we ended up doing a total of 6 initiations. In the 6 months I was there, we did 6 initiations, 5 passings, and a raising. And I was able to participate in Brother Schallenbarger, shout out to him if he's watching, to be able to work with him as initiating him, passing him, and then raising him before I left. And that was just a fantastic experience. We met. It made the 6 months go by like in a flash, and everybody there. We had guys every week. It was a different crowd of people you would get that would show up for lodge, and everybody just pitched in and did what they needed to do. to help out. Here's an example of that.
Oh, nice.
So right there,
where are you guys meeting right there?
we were meeting in the room adjacent to a tavern.
Nice.
And so there was great joy in that at this time. This was after the New Year's, on the second half of the 3 months, and we'd been kicked out of the first building that we were in because the military needed to use it again. So we started meeting in the tavern and in the room in their meeting hall. But here you see Grand Lodge of Alabama, Grand Lodge of Oklahoma, of course Grand Lodge of Arizona, Grand Lodge of Oklahoma. You've got Canada, you've got California, Nevada, Romania, Washington, England. I got to witness the working tools in the English working tools for all 3 degrees. I got to hear those lectures, and of course the Canadian lectures on everything. The standing rule was if you knew a lecture in your degree work or in your home province, you gave it in that. So you actually saw a flavor of degree work. So that was really neat. And so
it's very much a melting pot, it looks like.
Oh, absolutely. It was a fantastic time. You saw the military guys there whenever they showed up, and we had a mixture. There was always some military guys there. For example, here we have the secretary was sitting in as the secretary, was a gentleman from England, and as you can see, he's feeling the pressure of secretary's job.
Secretary.
The British had a rule that you couldn't be with. You had to have your weapon had to be within 3 feet. So he had to carry his weapon in, but pointed it towards the wall. So most people were armed if they needed to be. Of course, we had shelling going on. We had to hit the floor a couple times while rockets were inbound during meetings. That was fairly normal. And then there was a story before I was there. There was the story that I think they'd gone over to Prince Hall Lodge, and while they were there, there'd been a shelling normal, and then the gate had been breached, and the worshipful master calmly turned to the tiler. There was a question as to whether or not they wanted to continue the lodge, and the worshipful master turned to the tiler and said, told him to put a bullet in the chamber, and they continued the meeting. So,
wow.
So that's really neat. Opening the discussion up to everybody at this point. It was a great introduction to military lodges. There are always benefits and issues to meeting in a tactical environment like that. And I just wanted to open that up to discussion a little bit to talk about some of the benefits and also some of the challenges of doing that. One of the challenges, I think, is just the idea of recognition, because Eric, you mentioned that at the time that you were there in Kandahar, there was only one AF and AM lodge meeting in Afghanistan, but there were Prince Hall lodges and multiple Prince Hall lodges on each base. So coming from a Grand Lodge environment where not all Prince Hall lodges are recognized, that could prove some issues for the casual Mason just going over and deploying somewhere.
No, absolutely, and that was where guys tended to come to us because of that. They weren't sure if the Grand Lodge recognized Prince Hall or what, so there was a certain amount of being safe by at least they could come to us. But there's a lot of discussion about the recognition. A lot of the Grand Lodges in the United States have supposedly supported fully the expansion of Masonry in a combat zone. The practice I've seen to be a little less. The only existence I know the Grand Lodge of Nebraska had the Swisher kit. And
so what's a Swisher kit? The
Swisher kit was a complete, basically lodge in a box that somebody could take and deploy over. I've only seen, although they've had it supposedly since 2004, 2005 time frame, there was one case where it was used in 2012 up in Kabul for about 6 months, from what I've been able to find, and and they initiated 6 guys, but the regularity, I think the issue really comes down to the Grand Lodges being hesitant to issue a charter based on the regularity of the lodge and making sure that the work was done in a proper way, and it really gives kudos to the Grand Lodge of Ontario. That did not happen overnight. That took about 5 years to get the Canadian Lodge started. It was about 5 years of discussions, and I think, honestly, I don't think it would have happened without the very worshipful Rick Fulford being just a bedrock there. So.
Well, and I remember I was reading the book Better Angels of Their Nature, and they were it was a book about the Civil War. And it was really interesting how hesitant the Grand Lodges in this country were of allowing military lodges, because they were afraid that once the conflict was over, that those Grand Lodges would then take over the state, and then it would become this huge recognition problem where the Grand Lodge of New York would now also be the Grand Lodge of New York and Mississippi, and it was just kind of strange to look at, how concerned they were about these borders, and who was supposed to be a Mason, and yet you look 1 century before that, you've got the Grand Lodge of Ireland and the ancient Grand Lodge of England pretty much just handing out warrants to any military unit that wanted a charter at the time, hey, here you go. Come on over. Here's a charter. Here's a warrant. Have fun, guys. It's just funny how a century before.
Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was going to say that actually goes all the way back to 1732. Just 15 years after United Grand Lodge of England formed officially, you had the Grand Lodge of Ireland handing out its first warrant for a military lodge to, I believe, the British Foot Regiment. And it's interesting that military lodges are not a new concept whatsoever. And I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe Prince Hall himself was actually raised in a military lodge. I'm not sure if that completely.
My understanding is, it was a charter given by a Scottish light battalion or light brigade. Was where they received, he was initiated, and then they received their initial charter from. Yeah, no, it's the one thing I would say that's interesting is that there's really the last 20 years that we've been involved in conflicts is the first time that there has not been an organized lodge effort in those areas. The lodges, the Land, Sea, and Air Lodge #1 out of the Grand Lodge of New York was involved in World War I, World War II, Korea, and Vietnam, and yet was never able to be successfully implemented in Iraq or Afghanistan. There was one case where the gentleman that took it over, Mr. Charles Martin, he was asked by the Grand Lodge of New York to take the charter over and start a lodge at Balad in Iraq, and he brought it with him, and then 2 months later was told by the Grand Lodge of New York to return it, and that they promised to issue him a new one, and so he sent it back, and apparently that went into a museum, and once it had been over there, then they claimed now it had been over in Iraq, and then it went back into a museum, and they never sent him another charter. So there's obviously disconnects and communication issues.
So, Eric, I have another question. We talked a little bit about the challenges with recognition, but also I could also foresee some sort of jurisdictional challenges as well. Like you said, there were multiple Prince Hall lodges out there, but only one AF&AM, and like, how do you? I mean,
so
the Great Lodges will have to figure out, well, who's first, who planted their flag first, and all that. What's your experience or knowledge on that?
Well, you have a flag.
Yeah. So anybody that was initiated, the 6 guys that were initiated while I was there, was the way the dispensation worked is that they had to work this out. Was Trent Lodge #38, which I'm a member of. I chose to go ahead and affiliate and join with them. The Canada Lodge in Afghanistan acts as an extension of Trent Lodge #38. So so this all had to go through Trent Lodge to be able to sponsor and do that, and so what happens is the gentlemen that are the brothers that are initiated in Afghanistan are automatically members of Trent Lodge number 38.
They're Canadian Masons, right?
They're Canadian Masons, and at that point, that at least gives them validity, and it's not Canada Lodge operating in Kandahar that is they're now having to get some kind of paperwork and there's no Grand Lodge and stuff. So I thought that was a great system that allowed a lodge basically to sponsor a forward operating contingent. Then you could also, by being there as a member, you could then affiliate with the lodge too. And so I chose to affiliate with them because I really support what they do, and I'm happy to be a part of that.
My question is also, could an American lodge be established, AF and AM, out in the same area?
I think that I don't know. I think the answer would be that if they were to use that model, Herndon 264 could work with the Grand Lodge of Virginia, and if there was a way of ensuring the regularity and ensuring the capabilities, then they could issue it. They could have those people as an extension of Herndon 264, for example, or something. It would be, Virginia Lodge in Kandahar.
Okay, so that gets around having to say, well, I own this whole territory.
Right.
I'm as forward extension. I like that. That's interesting.
Yeah, I thought that was a great solution to the problem that the American lodges have, American Grand Lodges just haven't been able to figure out. So.
Yeah, well, and the thing is, usually, as long as there isn't a Grand Lodge there, it's that exclusive. Oh God, what's it called? Exclusive territorial jurisdiction doctrine that American Grand Lodges hold to, and usually, if it's like, since there is no Grand Lodge of Afghanistan or Grand Lodge of Iraq, it's one of those. It's considered Masonic terra nullius, as in that there's no one in charge. So any lodge that wants to be there can be there, and that's kind of why you have so many Prince Hall lodges there, and the Canadian Lodge there, because it's an open territory. It doesn't matter who's there, really.
Nick, how do you know all this stuff? What do you mean? Do you just read Masonic law all the time?
Well, you see, I have a long bus ride, so
he's like Neo in the Matrix. He gets something inserted into the back of his head. It just floods his head with Masonic knowledge.
Oh man, well, it's kind of funny actually talking about those jurisdictional issues. I was chatting with a guy, and he was having kind of a problem because he had been initiated out there in a lodge, and then he's coming back to the States, and he said, "Well, I'm in a Prince Hall lodge, and it's recognized in the state, but I don't know how to transfer my membership out of that Grand Lodge." And then, it's getting into this huge thing where he wants to move to another state. So now it's essentially he has to get out of this, go out to that, and then out to that again. So it gets very complicated when you get back stateside. It seemed like at least what I noticed.
Very true.
One of the other things that I was thinking about, it's kind of the same issue and challenge that John and I are facing with Patriot Lodge. You have a very itinerant membership where members are coming in and out all the time. Members are getting raised and then they're moving somewhere else, along the same lines of what you were talking about, Nick. And it seems to me like that would be another really big challenge outside of the typical jurisdictional issue that we just talked about.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Hey Eric, aside from packing heat, what else is noticeably different than just traditional lodges? Okay, I think his connection.
We lost him.
Came out and came back in. There we go.
See, I plugged that cord into my head and it screwed everything up.
Way to go, Nick. Hey, so Eric, my question was, aside from the turnaround and all that, shoot, I lost my question.
Oh man, sorry.
Jason,
what else is markedly different in military lodges?
Aside from
since we can't TiVo the episode while we're broadcasting it.
Right. I would say just the exposure to the various Grand Lodges, the ritual. For me, the Canadian ritual was just amazing. Also, the brotherhood to see guys from England, Romania, Sweden, all the Grand Lodges of the United States represented was just fantastic. That was probably the neatest part of the experience. One thing I was going to say too was probably the highlight of it was getting together on a Saturday night for a movie, and it made the time go by quickly because we were meeting on Fridays or Saturdays for a movie, Sunday mornings for coffee, and then lodge during the week. And so we got together on a Friday night. Somebody was suggesting a movie, and somebody threw out, hey, how about The Man Who Would Be King? It was
Nice.
like, I don't know, okay, I'd never seen it. I mean, it just didn't dawn on me. And so we're sitting there watching the movie in a lodge in Afghanistan, and it just hit. And it was just the most amazingly surreal experience to know that we were, you're watching a movie about Masonry in Afghanistan. So
Awesome.
that was probably the most amazing thing, and the brotherhood, just being able to, guys came in, and I was going to say too that guys came in and they were in uniform, whether it was a lieutenant colonel or a staff sergeant, their rank came off and that went on.
That's amazing.
And that was just a universal thing. They took off their rank and they put on their patch, and they put on the square and compass, and we all met on the level. And the one time I know a staff sergeant showed up, and this colonel, hadn't taken his off yet, and he was like, "Oh my God, that's a lieutenant colonel there," and then his eyes got bigger when the guy just took his patch off and put the symbol on.
Nice. Awesome.
So, yeah, so that was probably the biggest fun and most amazing stuff about it.
That's interesting because you hear about some of the past presidents like Truman attending lodge while they're in the White House. Actually, I had a Capitol police officer come and interview me as part of my investigation committee 3 years ago at Acacia, and he was talking about stories where the president, he had to go to lodge with the president of the United States. I believe it was Gerald Ford, and everybody's there with the president, and the president's on the level, just one of the Masons for that span of that 2-hour lodge meeting. And there's no other organization that you can be a part of where everybody is truly equal for the space of that lodge meeting. It's just the coolest thing in the world.
Yeah. One of the British guys was there, said that of course in Europe and other places Masonry is not as they don't advertise as much and everything. So he was saying that I think it was the Lord or the Duke of Kent was a member of his lodge.
Nice.
So I mean, just that kind of, I mean, that's really neat that everybody's on the level, and we didn't see anybody outside the base. Obviously, the military lodge tends to be closed to the base, and so there wasn't any participation outside. And of course, Masonry has been banned in Pakistan, and it's thriving in India, but it's banned in Pakistan and Afghanistan right now. So.
Interesting. Hey, John, do we have anything by the way of social media tonight? I didn't see a whole lot.
Sure, yeah. The Facebook page was kind of light, but we had a couple good questions on Twitter. One was very excited about a Masonic horror movie, but the answer above so below. But we had a question from a Juan Sepulveda.
Oh, okay.
Juan Sepulveda, okay. And he was asking exactly what you just mentioned earlier about how was the dynamic of having brothers meeting on the level when outside they had their own specific chain of command. And I think you answered that perfectly, that everyone walked in, and that's kind of great because for those who aren't familiar with the military, rank is everything. That you do not talk back to your superior officers, and it really totally contradicts the whole fraternal aspect of meeting on the level where everyone is at the same level, and especially you have to have someone in charge to run the meeting. The worshipful master at the time may have a lower rank than other members present, and so for that period of time, like you said, it was handled Masonically and not in a rank issue.
Right.
So that was really about it.
All right. Well, it's kind of a short and sweet episode tonight. Let's go around and do some shameless plugs and final thoughts. Let's start with you, John.
All right. Well, I think this is a great topic. I was honored to have Brother Jameson give this expanded version of this presentation at the Patriot Lodge last year, and he has so much more information. It's very hard to condense this. So I think he did a great job kind of covering the highlights for those who don't know what the concept of a military lodge is. With that, thank you very much for watching. Please like us, share us. We are this close to 2,000 likes on Facebook. See if you can recommend us to a friend and see if we can get a couple more likes. Please donate to the show, as well as we have some pins for sale. It just helps us keep the show running, keeps our podcast hosting costs from coming from out of our pockets, because we love to do this anyway, but it would help every little bit. With that, I will hand it back to you, Jason.
Great. Nick, what you got for us?
Well, I was actually very interested in this topic when it was announced to me, because I've been reading a few books about the expansion of Freemasonry, and it's been highlighted in a number of books. Professor Jacobs' book about the origins of Freemasonry, and a lot of these other ones, that it was military lodges that were the most important contributing factor to the spread of Freemasonry throughout the world. I was reading a thing, and I'm going to mention him out because I'm also on reddit.com/r/Freemasonry. The past master, yeah, he can just get all excited about that. I'm sure he is. But I was mentioning about George Washington not being a regular Mason, and he said wrong. And apparently, the lodge that he was a part of, Fredericksburg Lodge, that he was raised in, was originally a military lodge. It was given a warrant by, I believe, the Grand Lodge of Scotland for the first Scots Guard. It might have been the Grand Lodge of Ireland, but either way, it was very cool that George Washington was a member of a military lodge, and he was a famous military leader, and it was just kind of an interesting thing for me to know. With that, my name's Nick Johnson. I have a blog called MillennialFreemason.com. Come on out and visit it. We had a very interesting topic from a letter that went unpublished in the state supplement for Minnesota about commandery opening up to all Freemasons, not just those of the Christian faith. So it was a very interesting article. You can also find me on reddit.com/r/Freemasonry, and I'm a mod there, and you might like it. So, I don't know. Content's been getting crazy this week. 100 comments and stuff. Come on, guys. Anyway, thanks.
Yep.
And thank you again.
So yeah, go to the subreddit and add to the chaos. Brother Eric, thanks so much for being with us. Tap the topic up a little bit.
Yeah. No, it's an absolute honor and a pleasure to be with you guys. I follow all of your podcasts, and then as I can live. It's a great show, and I love what you guys are doing. So it's truly an honor and a pleasure to be here and to be able to talk about this subject. And if anybody's got any questions there, I'm more than happy to answer more detailed questions or follow on the discussion at a later point. So thanks.
No problem. We'll make sure to put your information up on the show notes. And as far as I'm concerned, military lodges are just, it's neat that you can go and go completely out of your comfort zone in service to your country, whatever that country may be, and have a second family right there on base with you. Because everybody's going through the same thing. They're all away from their homes. They're all in uncomfortable situations. And it just kind of brings it home for everybody. And so it's just really neat that we as an organization and as a fraternity have the ability to go in and serve each other in the hardest of situations across the world. And so that's just the neatest thing ever. My name is Jason Richards. I've got a blog. You can see it right there. It's the 2-Foot Ruler, Masonry in Plain Language. Go check it out. I'm also a regular contributor on the Midnight Freemasons. Go ahead and like us on Facebook, like us on YouTube, subscribe to us on YouTube, and check us out on iTunes. This is also an audio podcast. And engage with us. Keep the discussion going. Let us know what you want to hear about, because we're really interested in bringing up topics that are timely and relevant and of interest to everybody out there. And outside of that, we will see you back here next week. And in the meantime, you all please keep searching for more light.
Thanks.
Cheers.